All brothers remove their head coverings. All sisters pray with their heads covered. We face the east towards Jerusalem. Elder Mikael, can you go ahead and open us up in prayer?
Heavenly Father Yahweh, most holy and true covenant, Elohim, Abraham, Yishak, and Yaakov, all thanks unto you, Father, for allowing us, Father Yahweh, on your Shabbat, Father, to mingle with you, Father Yahweh, to give you glory and thanks for allowing us to be your children, Father Yahweh, to worship you, Father Yahweh, because you are righteous. Really, Father Yahweh, keep our hearts valuable for us, soft to your words, Father Yahweh, to enter into our hearts, Father, and change us, Father, to your way, Father, so we can appease you, Father Yahweh. Because, Father Yahweh, we know, Father Yahweh, we have done wrong in our lives, Father Yahweh, and we think evil thoughts every day, Father Yahweh, so we ask you, sure is my name, to have forgiveness, Father, and mercy upon us, Father Yahweh. Because, Father Yahweh, we know we are fallible, but you're not. So, Heavenly Father, we give you thanks and praise, Father, and put your words in our brothers' mouths, Father Yahweh. Let me speak your holy and mighty truth, Father Yahweh. Fill our hearts, Father Yahweh, with your true word, Father Yahweh. Let your word go across the world, Father Yahweh, four corners, to touch your brothers and sisters, your children, Father Yahweh. Give you thanks and prayers in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen. Amen.
We're going to get in the Sefer writings today, Enoch. So if you have access to a Sefer Bible or you have Book of Enoch, have that ready. If you don't have access, as always, we always have free access to download or watch online or read online any of the books that we'll ever read out, any of the Sefer writings. Some people like to throw out the Apocrypha or any of the other Sefer writings, Jubilees, Enoch, Yashar, because they say, oh, it's not in the King James. Well, none of the patriarchs walked around with the King James. None of them. The King James compiled the stuff that were some of the writings that the ancients had access to, but even the ancients didn't really have access to a lot of stuff. They had to go to the temple to hear these things read unto them. But these ancient writings were all looked at by the council that was put together by King James or Jacobus, and he decided, or the commission decided, well, what was important for his kingdom, what was going to be beneficial to his kingdom, to control the kingdom, control the realm, and they decided what they were going to leave in and what they were going to take out. And as time went on, they actually took out even more stuff and decided to put it back in. So we want to get out of that Greek mind frame of, the Biblios. That's it. That's all I deal with. we want to deal with the ancient scriptures, and we want to verify everything that's in the King James. And that's why I like the King James, because I can verify this stuff. I can go back into the Torah. I can go back into the Kobor's Codex, and I can see the Greek, and I can line for line, precept for precept, and at least see the language translations. So Shabbat Shalom. My name is Yadon Yasharal. My brother Yonatan Yasharal. Shabbat Shalom up. And the title of today's Shabbat study is The Firstborn. The Firstborn. We know that Yahweh told Moshe, Yasharal is my firstborn. But who is he speaking of? Because before Yaakov's name was changed to Yasharal, he's the last that was spoken of. You had Abraham, Yashak, Isaac, and then you had Yaakov after that. So what, these other individuals weren't born of Yahweh? Well, that's definitely not the case. So he's talking about a spirit here. And when we deal with people, we deal with a lot of people, and one of the most common fights that we're going to have to fight against is non-believers, people that do not believe in the Mashiach. As same way now is the same way it was in the time of the Mashiach. Folks that did not believe in the entirety of the scriptures. Back then, they didn't believe in the Old Testament because that's all they had, the Old Testament. They weren't believing in that, so they did not study the word. Keep in mind, like we opened up in the beginning, speaking about the fact that, you know, everybody didn't have a walk around with the tablets or had, you know, scrolls with all these ancient writings. These are things that were given word of mouth. The priests and the scribes and the Pharisees, they had the copies. And unless you were very wealthy and could afford to get something to write all this stuff down and a scribe to write it, you didn't have it. So a lot of them weren't as knowledgeable in the scriptures. And then the Pharisees were very tradition oriented and were more about pomp and circumstance and what they were taught, much like the ministries of this day that are taught by a specific group of people that taught this is how you're supposed to teach, versus dealing with what does it actually say. So with us being believers, we're not to always look at individuals that don't believe in the Mashiach as, oh, don't deal with them, don't talk to them. Well, that's our job. We're supposed to be in. An individual could say, I believe in the Mashiach, but they believe in what they were told about the Mashiach. And when you look back to the history of many of us, we all came from that background of believing in Christ. Many of us, very few of us came out of something, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, or whatever. I've yet to meet anybody that came out of that and went into believing in this entirety of this book. So that's our responsibility to be versed in this and understand that this is not some New Testament thing that just started in Greek, where all of a sudden the stories came out. Or this isn't something that was from ancient Kemet that they decided, you know, this is how the story went and then we stole it. Our ancient scriptures talk about that. And before any of this Egyptology and all that stuff was even translated, the Torah and the New Testament was translated into all the common and ancient languages in the world hundreds of years before they even got to that, to decide to look at a picture of a bird flying by and say, oh, that's the Mashiach being born from a virgin. It's easy to say that after the fact, hundreds of years. So this study, we're going to focus on the Mashiach, the firstborn. We're going to get into the prophecies and all the way from the beginning of creation in understanding the Mashiach from the Old Testament into the Sefer writings all the way into the New. So we're going to open up in Exodus, Shemot chapter 4. Exodus, Shemot chapter 4, and we're going to start at verse 10. And we're going to read through verse 22.
Exodus, Shemot chapter 4 and verse 10. And Moshe said unto Yahweh, O Yahweh, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore nor since you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue.
So what people would take this and say, oh, you know, he had a stuttering problem, or he couldn't speak well, or, he just wasn't a man of words. Well, this is a man that was brought up with the finest education that you can get in Egypt. He grew up in Pharaoh's house. But being that he grew up in Pharaoh's house, he's kind of similar to like how I am in a carnal sense. I was born in Jamaica, but I grew up in Miami. So my patois is negligible. I can understand it and I can speak it, but not like brothers that grew up there. So it's the same thing with Moshe. He didn't grow up around the Hebrews, so he understood some Hebrew. He understood some of that, but he couldn't speak it as eloquent as the brothers that were living in Goshen that spoke that amongst their culture. Go ahead.
And Yahweh said unto him, who has made man's mouth, or who makes the dumb or deaf, or the seeing or the blind? Have not I, Yahweh? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. And he said, O Yahweh, send, I pray you, by the hand of him who you will send. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moshe, and he said, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he comes forth to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you shall speak unto him and put words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, brother.
I wanted to add on that little part right there, just like we are too, even to this day, is that we sometimes decide to get out of things. If we have a fear of it, or we not sure of ourselves, or we're down on ourselves, we decide, well, let somebody else do it because I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I can handle this position, when we're being offered a position to handle some business. So if you look also at Moshe, he was trying to get out of this, it's like it was almost intimidating. He didn't want to get out of it. He didn't want to do this job. So Yahweh said already made a provision for him already. I mean, they didn't have no mailing situation where you can send off mail, and say, hey, brother, come meet me out here, send some email to him and stuff like that. No, Yahweh already knew what was in Moshe's heart, what he was going to say, what he was going to do. So he already sent for his brother, to come out to where he was. His brother didn't know where he was, So he already made a provision for him. You are not going to get out of what Yahweh wants you to do. You're going to handle that business. So you just showed him right now. No, you got no excuses. I took your excuses away from you. Here comes your brother. He's going to speak for you. And as you continue, you're going to see this exactly how he's going to be to his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And on the same point, too, we can't assume Yahweh going to send a fish to swallow us up every time we don't want to do his works. Eventually, Yahweh will get tired of you. You show that you don't want to be an obedient servant. That's fine. It's a spirit. I just need flesh to do a fleshly job. So I'll just take the spirit from you and give it to another servant. Go ahead.
And you shall speak unto him and put words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. And he shall be your spokesman unto the people. And he shall be to you instead of a mouth, and you shall be to him instead of Elohim. And you shall take this rod in your hand, wherewith you shall do signs. And Moshe went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said unto him, let me go, I pray you, and return unto my brethren which are in Mitzrayim, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moshe, go in peace. And Yahweh said unto Moshe in Midian, go, return to Mitzrayim, for all the men are dead which sought your life. And Moshe took his wife and his sons and set them upon a donkey, and he returned to the land of Mitzrayim, and Moshe took the rod of Elohim in his hand. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, when you go to return to Mitzrayim, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh which I have put in your hand, but I will harden his heart, and he shall not let the people go.
So sometimes the Most High will send you in a situation where it may appear on the surface that you are not being successful, that you are not going to fulfill the job, or it's going to be very difficult for you. But we have to remember all things are done for the glory of the Most High. So if he says, okay, I'm telling you to go say something to some people, but 2/3 of the people ain't going to hear a word you got to say, that doesn't mean that you can just choose, well, I'm not going to do it because, I'm not going to have a winning percentage. No, you got to do the job, because at the end of the day, Yahweh's will needs to be done. Go ahead.
And you will say, verse 22, and you shall say unto Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Yasharal is my son, even my firstborn.
Okay. So you shall say unto Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Yasharal is my son, even my firstborn. So we know that he's talking about the nation of Yasharal as well, being his son, his adopted son, which he's going to bring into the wilderness and adopt. And we know that we are the firstborn as far as the nations. But we also have a spiritual firstborn here, because there's a spirit that's going to be placed on the children of the children of Jacob, which is going to make them a son and make them a firstborn. And that is receiving the firstborn spirit, the first spirit that was slivered off and created from the only source of energy that's out there, which is the Most High, Yah. So we're going to go back. Let's go to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1. And we're just going to read 1 through 5. And we're going to take a look at that firstborn spirit. And Genesis chapter 1, 1 through 5. And, you know, I was listening to some sisters talk the other day that aren't necessarily in the word. And they were talking about, well, how was there Cain and Abel, and how were they able to take wives when, you know, their mother was the first creature ever created, and this, that, and the other. And what we have to understand to fully understand this book is that this book is written for Hebrews, by Hebrews, and to Hebrews, period. Now, anybody else that wants to attach unto the righteousness of the Most High can do that through Yasharal. So what this is chronicling the Holy Seed. This story is about the Holy Seed and anybody that pertains to us and how they dealt with us. It's from that perspective. It's not from a perspective of everything that ever happened in the world and every nationality and all their history and that's not the focus. If it affects us or deals with us in some kind of way, then it'll be chronicled. So there were other people. But what this is talking about in the beginning of the creation of Yah's firstborn, his sons, this is what happened. So we have to understand that that's what this is talking about. It's not talking about the only thing that was ever created. It doesn't care about that. It cares about the children of Yasharal and their progression. Bereshit chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 1 through 5. Genesis, and again, the title of today's Shabbat study is The Firstborn.
In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. And
all right, so in the beginning there was darkness. There was just darkness. And Yahweh, through the power of his own speech, through his own mouth, he said, let there be light, and there was light. So this is the creation of light. Go ahead.
And Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day.
Okay, so if we read further down, we understand when we get into verse 14, we see that the sun and the moon, the sun, especially the timekeeper, wasn't created yet. But yet there's still light here. There was still a creation of light. So again, if we start even at verse 1, it says, in the beginning. Now, in the beginning, the Hebrew word for that is reshith. Reshith, which is H7225. Reshith, spelled RESHIYTH. And that's where Bereshit comes from, which means in the beginning. So the definition is the first, in place, time, order, or rank. Specifically, a first fruit, beginning, chiefest, first fruits, part, time, principal thing. So in the beginning. Now, when it's talking about in the beginning, it's talking about the beginning of this story. The beginning of the holy seed, the beginning of the Yah putting his spirit into a man. Now, there may have been other things going on at that time. But that's not pertaining to us. What was pertaining to us is this right here. So people ask about the dinosaurs and all. Yeah, we know they were obviously here. We see the bones. But what does that have to do with the holy seed? This is what this is pertaining to. The children of Yasharal. Him and his firstborn nation, the only nation he ever knew, Yasharal. So just because the Bible is not talking about dinosaurs doesn't mean that it's devalidated. Now, also he said the light he called day. All right, so we know specifically the light portion of the day he calls Yom. And then the dark portion of the day he calls Leil. So the Hebrew word for day is Yom, which is H3117. And we have to understand in Hebrew, it's just like how Hebrews do their music. When we say certain things, it has a literal meaning and then it has a figurative meaning. So the literal meaning of Yom is to be hot, a day, the warm hours, from sunrise to sunset, or from sunset to the next, or figuratively a space of time defined by an associated term, often used adverbially, age, always, chronicles, continually, daily, birth, each to, day, days, elder, evening, for, forever, full, life, even the word life is in here, as long as, old, outlived, perpetually, presently, remaineth, required season, since, space, then, process of time, as at other times, in trouble, whether, when the, within a while, whole age, full year, and younger. But notice that they have the definition of also life in there, full life. You also have perpetually, outlived. All these are in the figurative definitions of Yom. So keep that in mind. Life was in that word light as well. So for day. And then you have night, which is Leil or Layla, which is H3915. Leil, spelled L-A-Y-I-L, H3915. And that's from the same as H3883, properly a twist away of the light. That is night, figuratively adversity, night. So the light he called day, which is considered also the life, and the night he called Leil, which is also the dark portion, but also adversity. So you have light, life in man, the light of man, the life of man, and then you have adversity, which is the adversary of the devil. Why figuratively he's considered darkness. And Yeshua, or the spirit of Yasharal, the firstborn, is considered life, light. So this concept is already created in just the first few verses of Bereshit. Let's stop right there. Now let's define that. Let's go to Yohanan, John, chapter 1. And from the beginning of our introduction into becoming so-called Christians, we're taught all about Christ. Christ this, Christ that, Jesus. We're taught all these things and we just believed. It was an indoctrination. And it was a good thing and a bad thing. It was a good thing because we were taught the importance, which was very, very, very important. But it was a bad thing because of the way that we were taught. We were taught by precepts of men. We were just taught, oh, you know, he's just sweet Jesus. He just loves you and he'd do everything for you. You can do what you want. And he just covers you and this, that, and the other. And we were set up for a fall. Because eventually somebody with a little bit more knowledge was going to come and knock us off that pedestal. And we had a choice to either, well, I'm just going to believe what I want to believe. But those that want to seek the truth are going to say, wait a minute, these are valid points that you're bringing up that are going against this whole Christos doctrine. And then many people get disenfranchised. And that's why it's important that we understand Christ from the biblical standpoint, so that when people come around and start to try to knock the Mashiach off of the pedestal, and try to remove his importance and call him an idol and create him into a Greek god, we can say, no. Yeah, that image that they set up, that's an idol. Yeah, throw that out. But the Messiah, the Mashiach, HaMashiach in this book, the Hebrew, that's real. And that's important, and I can prove it in any part of the book. Yohanan, John, chapter 1. We're going to start this at verse 1.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. The same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
All right. So again, it's letting you know, where's this starting? Where does this start?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. Reshith. So it's letting you know I'm going back to Genesis and talking about Genesis. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. So this is what a lot of carnal people can't understand. That how can you be Elohim and with Elohim at the same time? Well, that goes back to the term Elohim, the plural of mighty one, mighty ones. And you can be part of Elohim and Elohim at the same time, because everything that was ever created came from Elohim. Every spirit came from him. He was the master spirit. Go ahead.
Verse 2. And the same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
All right. So in him was life, and the life was the light of men. So that's what that light was. That light that was here in the beginning. That was Elohim and was with Elohim. This word is putting all these things together. The New Testament just allowed, through the presence of the Mashiach being put, the spirit of Yahshua being put into a man full time, to be able to spread that spirit with the disciples, with the Talmudim. So the Talmudim understood a little bit more and was able to break this down. So you had the Word, which was in the beginning, that was Elohim. And this word was the life of man, the light of man. So that was the light that was here in the beginning. That's how you can have light that was life, like in the different definition of Yom, and it lit up man and gave man life. Go ahead.
And the light shines in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was Yohanan. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of that light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light.
So he was not that life, but was sent to bear witness of that life. That life which is the light of man. The light that lights up man and gives man a life, an eternal life. So Yahshua came point blank and said, here, I came here to give man life and to show him how to live more blessed and more abundantly. Go ahead.
That was the true light, which shines, which lights every man that comes into the world.
So that was the true life. You have breathing life, a soul. You have that. But then you have a true life, which is a spiritual life that will allow you to be forever, like the Mashiach, just like his Father, that is forever, from the beginning and all the way to a never-ending period. That's the true life. That's what we're trying to receive. That's what we're trying to be part of. And you can only be part of that through going through the life, going through that light, the same thing that was there in the beginning. So if you don't understand that concept and you're thinking you're going to get it from just reading scriptures and doing an animal sacrifice, or saying, you know, prophecy said we're going to do this or we're going to do that, you sadly mistaken. Because from the beginning of the book to the end of the book is telling you the order of things. Go ahead. Go ahead, Elder.
I believe this is a very good explanation. I just want to add, when he's talking about that was the true light, and also look at it also as the true spirit, the light of the law. You know, because it's the truth. It means the spirit. Spirit. If it's the light, we're talking about that life. So it's the true life of the law.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this was Yeshua brought the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if we talk about life, we the truth of life, period. And that is the way how we understand the scriptures. It is the light of our life, the light of our life in these scriptures. If we follow and if we obey the commandments of the Father, then we have possibility to have that life eternal. So putting those words together, gives the deeper meaning from what Yeshua came for.
Right. Go ahead, brother.
Verse 10. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not.
So now we know who was the creator of all things. This life, this light of man was the creator of everything. So when we say, well, Yahweh was the creator, well, in a sense, because it was by his authority, everything was created. So you're not wrong in saying that. But who physically created everything? That was Yeshua. Israel, the spirit of Israel, the firstborn, that was the creator of all things. And if that's a whole nother class. But if we go to the New Testament, it explains all that a little bit more. When the CEO says, the CEO of Sony, that makes all these, just say Sony TVs or whatever the case, he not physically creating all these TVs. But his company, he's the head, and he say, this is what we gonna make. We gonna make TVs, or we gonna make camcorders or cameras. It's by his authority all these things are made, but his servants do the work. So his son was the one that was the creating of everything, because he was the one that created life. And all those other spirits that were created after him, those were the ones that did all the work. Go ahead.
Verse 11. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name.
So you can't reject this word, because this word is what makes you a son of Elohim. And through this word is how you become, how you believe on him. You believe on him because you believe his word. And the Mashiach, Yeshua, was just the earthly example of how to walk in perfection with this word and to be obedient of the Father. Go ahead.
Verse 12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of Yahweh.
So you can't be born and then all of a sudden, because you bloodline Israel, you automatically a son of Elohim. It don't work that way, because you have to keep his commandments. You got to believe in his name. You got to believe in his son, his word. You got to frame your life and live according to the laws of life to be adopted as a son of Elohim. We were born in the flesh. So we have to receive that spirit through this word, through the Mashiach, so that we can become sons of Elohim. And this is by the will of Yahweh, not the will of man. So you can't physically force anybody to become a son or daughter of Elohim. You can try to motivate them, you can lead them, you can teach them how, but you can't force them, because it's Yah's will. Go ahead.
Verse 13, which were born, verse 14, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
So the word was made flesh. So he just took the righteousness of the word, the firstborn spirit, and he put it all into one man to be this example, a specially crafted vessel, just like all of us were specially crafted vessels. He knows every hair on our head. He knows every thought of our heart. He knows what we're going to do before we even do it, because we were created for a purpose. But this person, Yeshua HaMashiach, was created for a special purpose. And the word was made into flesh, into him, so that the rest of the special vessels could learn how to walk from somebody who was sitting on the right hand of the Father, straight from the horse's mouth. Not from somebody that heard through a prophet, that, through many generations, read through a book, this, that, and the other. No, somebody that was literally just on the right hand of the Father. Go ahead.
Yohanan bare witness of him and cried, saying, this was he of whom I spoke. He that comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. and of his fullness have we all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moshe, but grace and truth came by Mashiach. No man has seen Yahweh at any time, but the only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. And this is the record of Yohanan. When the Yehudim sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" And he confessed, "I denied not, but confessed, I am not the Mashiach." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elias?" And he said, "I am not." "Are you that prophet?" And he answered, "No." Then said they unto him, "Who are you, that we may give answer to them that sent us?"
So they say, "Are you that prophet?" So we're going to get into that of what they were asking. Who is this prophet? Are you? There was plenty of prophets before this time. So, but they're saying that prophet because they're speaking of a specific prophet. Go ahead.
And they said unto him, "Who are you, that we may give an answer to him that sent us? What say you of yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of Yahweh, as said the prophet Isaiah." And they which were sent were of the Pharisees. And they asked him and said unto him, "Why baptize you then, if you be not the Mashiach, nor Elias, either that prophet?" Yohanan answered them, saying, "I baptize with water, but there stands one among you whom you know not. He it is, who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoe latchet I am not worthy to unloose." These things were done in Bethabara, beyond Jordan, where Yohanan was baptizing. And the next day Yohanan sees Yahshua coming unto him, and said, "Behold the Lamb of Yahweh, which takes away the sin of the world. This is he of whom I said, After me comes a man which is preferred before me, for he was before me."
So if we know the history, we know that Yohanan is 6 months older than Yahshua. So how could he have been before him? Because he's addressing the spirit that's inside this man, the spirit that is dwelling in him. This is what he's talking about. He's talking about, look, this is the vessel that is going to contain the firstborn spirit. And he's fitting these prophecies that I have been told and that I have been taught from a child. Go ahead.
"And I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Yasharal, therefore am I come baptizing with water." And Yohanan bare record, saying, "I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it abode upon him. And I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water, the same said unto me, Upon whom you shall see the Spirit descending and remaining on him, the same is he which baptizes with the Ruach Kadesh. And I saw, and I bear record that this is the Son of Yahweh."
All right. So the same as he which baptizes or immerses with the Holy Spirit, with the Spirit of truth, which gives this comforter, the same comforter we read about in the last Bible study, where it's talking about, "I will send this comforter unto you." So let's stop right there. Let's go into Enoch. We're going to go into some of these Sefer writings, and we're going to see that this was prophesied. All these things were already in play before we even got into getting into the Torah and the scriptures.
You back here, Tina?
Enoch chapter 46. And again, if you do not have access to the book of Enoch, you can get it on IsraelitesGathering.com. Either download a copy or read along with us. And Enoch is one of the ancient scriptures that, the same sources of proof that we prove that the Torah existed, the same sources that prove that the book of Enoch was ancient, that this was here as well, and that it was a valid scripture. But of course, once the Greeks get a hold of it and they start to put their Greek mind frame on it, they will translate it a certain way to meet their agenda of what they're trying to say. But all you have to do is when you read it, just run it up against Torah and just make sure that it aligns properly so that you know that you're getting the proper understanding. Because none of these books contradict each other. Enoch chapter 46, and we're going to start this at verse 1.
"At that place I saw the one to whom belongs the beforetime. His head was white like wool, And there was with him another individual whose face was like that of a human being. His countenance was full of splendor like that of one among the Kodesh Malachim, the holy angels. And I asked the one from among the Malachim, who was going with me and who had revealed to me all the secrets regarding the one who was born of human beings? Who is this, and from where is he who is going as the prototype of the before time? And he answered and said to me, this is the Son of Man, to whom belongs righteousness, and with whom righteousness dwells. And he will open all the hidden storerooms, for Yahweh of hosts has chosen him, and he is destined to be victorious before Yahweh of hosts in eternal uprightness.
So it's talking about who is this and from whence is who is going as the prototype of the before time. So we know in the beginning, Bereshit, light was created. Then you go all the way down to the 6th day that man's created. So all them days before man was created is before time. It's all before time because we even hit the scene yet. So this prototype that they're talking about here is the Mashiach. And this is before Torah was even given. They're talking about the Messiah. Go ahead.
This Son of Man, whom you have seen, is the one who would remove the kings and the mighty ones from their comfortable seats and the strong ones from their thrones. He shall loosen the reins of the strong and crush the teeth of sinners. He shall dispose the kings from their thrones and kingdoms, for they do not extol and magnify him, neither do they obey him, the source of their kingship.
Now, some of these versions will say son of Adam, and Adam just means man. So it's the same thing what they're saying right here. Go ahead.
The faces of the strong will be slapped and filled with shame and gloom. Their dwelling places and their beds will be worms. They shall have no hope to rise from their beds, for they do not extol the name of Yahweh of hosts. And they have become the judges of the stars of heaven. They raise their hands to reach Yahweh, the Most High, while walking upon the earth and dwelling in her. They manifest all their deeds in oppression. All their deeds are oppression. Their power depends upon their wealth, and their devotion is to the gods which they have fashioned with their own hands. But they deny the name of Yahweh of hosts.
So when it talks about here about how they are judges of the stars of heaven, they're looking up at the servants, which are supposed to give us signs and seasons and times and things of that nature. And they're judging the stars and trying to fashion their life based upon what they're seeing. And the stars saying, oh, the star says this, so that means I need to do this or I need to do that. Instead of using it for what it's for to keep our time and to make sure that we're following Yah's order according to Yah's calendar system. And they're making their own mighty ones and making representations of the mighty ones, which are angels of different spirits, and making idols out of them and worshiping them instead of worshiping the Most High. Go ahead.
Yet they like to congregate in his houses and with the faithful ones who cling to Yahweh of hosts.
So they want to associate with the Kodashim. They want to associate with the saints, and they want to be around them, but secretly they want to go home and do the things that are going to give them benefit in their own life. Let's move on. Let's go to 48. Enoch chapter 48.
Furthermore, in that place I saw the fountain of righteousness, which does not become depleted and is surrounded completely by numerous fountains of wisdom. All the thirsty ones drink of the water and become filled with wisdom. Then their dwelling places become with the Kodesh, righteous, and elect ones.
This is all in Revelation, 21 and 22? It's talking about these same things. Go ahead.
At that hour, the Son of Man was given a name in the presence of Yahweh of hosts, the before time, even before the creation of the sun and the moon. Therefore, before the creation of the stars, he was given a name in the presence of Yahweh of hosts.
All this is consistent with Torah. In the beginning, there was darkness upon the face of the earth, and Yah said, let there be light, and there was light. So he was created. All this before the sun and all this stuff was created. The sun wasn't created until the 4th day. So all these different things are being consistent with Torah. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. He will become a staff for the righteous ones in order that they may lean on him and not fall. He is the light of the Gentiles and he will become the hope of those who are sick in their hearts. All those who dwell upon the earth shall fall and worship before him. They shall magnify, bless, and sing the name of Yahweh of hosts.
Every tongue shall confess and every knee shall bow. Consistent. Go ahead.
For this purpose he became the chosen one. He was concealed in the presence of Yahweh of hosts prior to the creation of the world and for eternity. And he has revealed the wisdom of Yahweh of hosts to the righteous and the Kodesh ones. For he has preserved the portion of the righteous because they have hated and despised this world of oppression, together with all its ways of life and its habits in the name of Yahweh of hosts. And because they will be saved in his name, and it is his good pleasure that they live, that they have life. In those days, the kings of the earth and the mighty landowners shall be humiliated on account of the deeds of their hands. Therefore, on the day of their misery and weariness, they will not be able to save themselves. I shall deliver them into the hands of my elect ones like grass in the fire and like lead in the water. So they shall burn before the face of the Kodesh ones and sink before their sight, and no place will be found for them. On the day of their weariness there shall be an obstacle on the earth, and they shall fall on their faces, and they shall not rise up again, nor anyone be found who will take them with his hands and raise them up. For they have denied Yahweh of hosts and his Mashiach. Blessed be the name of Yahweh of hosts.
So all this is talking about the Mashiach before Moshe even given the Torah. Go to Enoch 49. Next chapter.
So wisdom flows like water, and majesty is measureless before him forever and ever. For his might is in all the mysteries of righteousness, and oppression will vanish. Splendor
Like a shadow.
and oppression will vanish, like a shadow having no foundation. The elect one stands before Yahweh of hosts. His splendor is forever and ever, and his power is unto all generations. In him dwells the spirit of wisdom, the spirit which gives thoughtfulness, the spirit of knowledge and strength, and the spirit of those who have fallen asleep in righteousness. He shall judge the secret things, and no one will be able to utter vain words in his presence, for he is the elect one before Yahweh of hosts according to his good pleasure.
So all the ancient writings and in Torah and everything always gave an understanding of Elohim, multiple spirits, Yahweh of hosts, being reconciled into one spirit. But there is one master spirit that's created that is the prototype of all this. Now, when you take that spirit and you fast forward all the way to the time of the Mashiach, where he's put into the Messiah, there becomes an idolization at this point. At this point, people can only, all they can see is the man. But you have to understand the spirit that went in the man. That's the importance. The man was just a vessel that was created to host that spirit. And Yahweh showed you how he cared about that flesh. He don't care about that flesh like that. To the point where he said, kill him. You're going to have to get that flesh up. And then you're going to come back to me and be in the spirit. So the focus shouldn't be so much on the man, the flesh and what it did. It needs to be the focus on the spirit that was there, the firstborn spirit, Yasharal, this word, and how righteousness comes about. Because just because a man came here and did something, that don't make you righteous. But the spirit that was in that man, if we follow after that spirit, and if we become true followers of Christ, then now that spirit, that man that came here has more importance, because the spirit that he gave out, the example that he showed, is something that we can follow and effectively receive life after the death the same way he did. All right. Now let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 18. And we're going to see that are you that prophet is what they were talking about. Devarim chapter 18.
Aki, what this reminds me of is is putting everything in its proper perspective and order, making sure theology is clear and has clarity. Because a lot of people go and like, what is the reason for Yahshua? What's the point? But if you know the law and you know the reasons why Yah set certain things up, and then you look in the apocryphal books and you see what has been removed and why we can't get a full perspective. These things help us get the full perspective of salvation, that you don't just get up one day and be like, all right, I'm justified with Yah.
Right.
It don't work like that. There's going to have to be works to justify the wrongdoer and the sinner.
Right.
Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 18 and verse 13. You shall be perfect with Yahweh, your Elohim. This is Deuteronomy chapter 18, and we're starting at verse 13. You shall be perfect with Yahweh, your Elohim. For these nations which you shall possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for you, Yahweh your Elohim has not suffered you to do so. So these are soothsayers and those who do witchcraft. Yahweh your Elohim will raise up unto you a prophet from the midst of you, of your brethren, like unto me. Unto him shall you hearken.
So this is Moshe speaking here. So he's saying Yahweh shall raise up a prophet like unto me. Unto him you shall hearken. So Moshe spoke face to face with Yahweh. Moshe didn't have to go through somebody else to hear anything. He received it directly from Yahweh. And he was able to receive so much of the Spirit from Yahweh that his face glowed. Now, there's only one prophet that was that close to the Most High. And this is who they're talking about. They're saying, a prophet like unto me. So we know this prophet is going to be an Israelite, for one, because it has to be like unto him. And this prophet has to be face to face with Yahweh. And only one person was face to face with Yahweh, and that's Yahshua HaMashiach. He was the only one, because he went to the right hand of the Father. And he came directly from the Father at that baptism when the Spirit descended on him like a dove and stayed with him. And they were waiting on this Spirit, because this Spirit would have been the deliverer, this prophet. They were waiting on that. That's why they would ask Yohanan the Baptist, are you that prophet? Are you here to restore the kingdom? Are you about to take us out of this captivity? Because they were occupied people at this time. They were in Jerusalem, but the Greeks were running things. The Romans were there. They were controlling things. And then they had an Edomite king. So all these things that are going on, this is passed on from generation to generation of hear and listen. This prophet is going to come and he's going to restore us and put us back in our proper state. So this is who they were talking about here. Go ahead, Elder.
I just want to add, that's probably why when we had Cephas and Yaakov, and he went up to check from his mountain, he said a transfiguration ground, it showed that, he said, this is Matthew chapter 17, verse 2, he said, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared to him Moshe and Elias talking with him. Now, this also could explain, also, like I said, Moshe was very, very close to the Father, as his face did shine, because he was around that holiness all the time, And so, yeah, it would make sense that Moshe is talking about, he's going to make it, a person that's going to be as him, from his own people.
Right.
But greater than him. And Elias, that could be also the spirit that was in his cousin. That was calling and crying in the wilderness, making the way straight for his cousin, which is to come before him, came after him, before him. So this right here is like another witness to Moshe and Elias for Yahshua and John the Baptist.
Right. We also read earlier when he said, and Aaron shall be your spokesperson, and you shall be unto him like as an Elohim.
That's right.
So you are to be like a mighty one to them. Moshe spoke the word. He gave the commandments. He gave the law. He gave the word to Yasharal. So like unto him, the only person that could do that is Yasharal, because that was the word. He was the word in flesh. He was given unto Yasharal. So there is no other prophet that gave the word like Moshe, other than Yahshua HaMashiach, because he was the word in flesh. So there's no other prophet that can fit that aspect, because none of these other prophets gave the word like that. They didn't bring something new. All they did was say, Yahweh pissed off at y'all because y'all ain't keeping these commandments. This is what's going to happen to you. Yahshua didn't come that way. He came to give the word. He came to fulfill it, which is make it more complete, give more understanding. Go ahead.
All right. Verse 16. Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 16. According to all that you desired of Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, neither let me see this great fire anymore, that I die not. And Yahweh said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren like unto you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die.
And what we have to understand is Yahweh speaks to his prophet in a vision or in a dream. So, we'll have hunches about things. And I feel like the Spirit is telling me something is going to happen. We have to be very careful about that, because we also are taught to say, if it be Yah's will, we'll do this or we'll do that. And we say, I'll see you tomorrow, brother. No, we say, Yah's will, I'll see you tomorrow, because we understand it's all according to the will of the Father. Well, when we have these hunches about things, we want to make sure we clarify that as well. Like, hey, listen, I feel like this is going to happen if it's Yah's will. That way we make sure that we're not presumptuously speaking in the name of Yahweh, trying to make ourselves something that we're not, by saying tomorrow the sun is going to go down. And when it goes down, there's going to be 10 wars. You want to be careful with that type of stuff, because you don't want to become a false prophet speaking things presumptuously in Yahweh's name. Go ahead.
Verse 21. And if you shall say in your heart, how shall we know the word which Yahweh has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh, if the thing follows not, nor come to pass, this is the thing which Yahweh has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken presumptuously, you shall not be afraid of him.
Now, I don't know of a time when any of these prophets in the word of prophets of Yahweh said something that didn't happen. I don't know. Now, there's future prophecies that haven't been fulfilled, but the ones they say, like, tomorrow this is going to happen, or on this day this is going to happen. I don't know of any prophets of Yahweh that has happened to, but I can tell you 1,000 prophets here in this world that said the world was going to end in 1999. There's thousands of prophets that were saying, Obama going to get a third term, and he's going to be the Antichrist, and all these different prophecies that these so-called fake prophets are telling you. We know they're not prophets of Yahweh, because these things didn't happen. You have one guy said the world was going to end in 99. Then he said the world was going to end in 2012. It was a Harold Camping, a Gentile, which is not a prophet like unto Moshe, because Moshe wasn't a Goyim, but said these things, and yet people still following these prophets that are telling you things that ain't going to happen, that didn't happen. When the book tell you right there, these are false prophets. This is how you know the false prophet. Let's go to Malachi chapter 4. We finished that, right?
Yeah.
Malachi chapter 4. That's the last book of the Old Testament, right before Matthew.
Supposed to be a Ham after that.
You said what?
Supposed to be Maccabees after that.
Maccabees. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where Maccabees was when you put it in order. The Sefer, I believe, has it in order. Malachi chapter 4, and we're going to start this at verse 1.
For behold, the day comes and shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that comes shall burn them up, says Yahweh of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name, the Son of Righteousness arise with healing, shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall.
All right, so it's talking about unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. So this is also dealing with the Mashiach. Now, when you see the word son, S-U-N, people think that that's some kind of sun worship type situation going on. But again, in Hebrew understanding and writing, there's a lot of metaphors, and there's a lot of poetic type writing with multiple layers of understanding. So if you look at the word son, the Hebrew word for son was shemesh, which is H8 121. Shemesh, spelled S-H-E-M-E-S-H. Shemesh. And that's from an unused root meaning to be brilliant. The sun, by implication the east, figuratively a ray. That is architecturally a notch embattlement. East side, eastward, sun rising, westward, window. And then the word wings is very important. It's kanaf, which is H3671. Kanaf. K-A-N-A-P-H. Why is that word important? Before we get into the definition.
Commandments.
Commandments. Go ahead, Elder.
It depicts that you study the commandments. So the canal is on the borders of your hem of your garment.
Right.
So it's supposed to state that if you're aware of that you study the commandments, you follow the commandments. It's the signal that you understand. Everybody, when you see you, say, "Oh, I'm trying to follow righteousness." You know, so if you want to understand righteousness, Yahweh allowed me, I'm speaking to you. And if you follow me, I'm supposed to conduct myself as Yahweh says I am. That is the word.
Right. Excellent. Kanaf. To have a kanaf is the border, and Hebrews who keep the commandments on the borders of their garments. This is your kanaf, your border, and the border of your garments. This whole lower region is your kanaf. And on the border, you have tzitzit. You have your fringes. And then you have your patil, which is your stitching right here, which has to be tekleth. The ribbon is kind of a fashion thing. It says riband, but when you look up that word, it's talking about the stitching. It's a twisting. And then you have your gadils, which are on your four corners. If you are keeping the commandments, then this is what you would have. So when it's talking about the Son of Righteousness and his wings right here, the healing in his wings, what heals us from death, because sin causes death, the wages of sin is death, is the righteousness of his word, his commandments, keeping the commandments, which means if you keep in the commandments, that means you're going to repent from the wickedness, the things that are causing you death in your life. So this is symbolic here. The brilliance, the brightness, the ray, the light, the life. All this is tied into daytime, yom, which means life, is going to cover you. The Son of Righteousness with the healing of his commandments shall go forth, and that will cause you to grow up. Go ahead and finish that.
Verse 3, and you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, says Yahweh of hosts. Remember you the law of Moshe my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Yasharal, with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Yahweh. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse.
All right. Let's go to Tehillim, Psalms, chapter 110. And now we're gonna get into a few of these writings that you want to write down and always have these as notes to be able to always get to these scriptures here, because these are the infallible ones. These are the ones that the non-believers, they have to gainsay this. They cannot deny the Messiah. They have to make something up or have to apply something that doesn't apply to get by these scriptures here. And if you read it from a Hebrew perspective and use the entirety of the book, it explains exactly who it's talking about. But when you want to put one hand, your right hand behind your back, and just use your left hand and try to prove your point using this scripture, then you got to make up a bunch of stuff to make it not apply to the Mashiach. You got to remove so much of the Old Testament and completely remove the New Testament and make something up and just hope that it sticks to get by this. So these are the haymaker scriptures that every believer should have in his back pocket to somebody who has not been told, has not understood the Mashiach.
Psalms 110 and verse 1. Yahweh said unto my sovereign, sit you at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Yahweh shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion, rule you in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be willing in the day of your power, in the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning. You have the dew of your youth. Yahweh has sworn and will not repent. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Yahweh at your right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the heathen. He shall fill the places with the dead bodies. He shall wound the heads of over many countries. He shall drink of the brook in the way, therefore he shall lift up the head.
All right, where did we just read?
That was Psalms 110.
All right, so if we get into the first verse of Psalm 110, it says, Yahweh said unto my Adonai, sit you at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. So in this one verse, how many different entities are being addressed here?
Yahweh said unto my sovereign.
So you have Yahweh said unto my, which means there's a third person, and sovereign. So somebody has a sovereign who is Adonai. That's one person. Then you have Adonai, that's two person. And then who's speaking to Adonai? Yahweh. So that's three people right here. So Yahweh said unto my Adonai, sit you at my right hand. So he's telling somebody, sit at my right hand.
He's giving witness to somebody else.
Right. Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Moshe ain't at the right hand of Yahweh. Not at all. Isaiah ain't at the right hand of Yahweh. King David, we already read where he's at. He's in the grave. His sepulchre's there. He's not at the right hand of Yahweh. So there's only one person that's able to be at the right hand of Yahweh. And that's Yasharal, the firstborn spirit, the same spirit that was with Yahweh and was Yahweh. So that one verse right there, just that one verse destroys that whole, oh, there is no other. There was only Yahweh. Yes, there is no other master spirit. Everything came from Yahweh. Everything slivered off of Yahweh, the master energy, the only spirit. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be what?
It can only be transferred.
Transferred. That's it. So that same law that so-called Gentile came up with that theory, what was it, Newton or whatever, so-called came up with that theory, which we know that's ancient knowledge. But even from that worldly perspective, you have Yahweh, the master spirit, and it cannot, no other can be created. It can only sliver off of his spirit. It can only be transferred into something else. So Yahweh decided, I am the spirit of everything, the only spirit, and I'm going to transfer my energy into life and create light. And this light is going to be the life of man. So this verse right here destroys that whole that there's only Yahweh and there's nothing else. But even if that was the case, how do you explain angels? How do you explain cherubims and all these other entities? Were they different? All right, let's move on. We're going to go to Proverbs, Mishlei, chapter 30. Again, Psalms 110 and Proverbs 30 are your haymakers. Those are the ones that they cannot gainsay. They have to lie. They have to come up with some wild understanding. Now, they can throw something out and say, oh, yeah, they're talking about David. Really? So David's David's in heaven. No man is ascended into heaven except for he that came down from heaven. But David came down from heaven, right? So you telling me the man that can sleep with somebody's wife and kill the husband is sitting on the right hand of the Father in heaven, despite all the scripture. He just skipped the judgment process and all that and just went straight to the right hand of the Father. Now that's making David into an idol. He was a great king and somebody that we all should strive to be like when he was walking in righteousness. But you can't idolize it and make him a god, because he's not. Proverbs chapter 30. And we want to write this one down too as well. Proverbs 30. Start to say verse 1.
The words of Agur, the son of Yake, even the prophecy the man spoke unto Ithiel, even unto Ithiel and Ukal. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who has ascended up into heaven or descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fist? Who has bound the waters in a garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if you can tell?
So, what is his name? And what is his son's name, if you can tell? Is this talking about a man here?
Nope.
Is this talking about what, Melchizedek, the priest or whatever? They don't mention Melchizedek having a son. It mentions he didn't even have a father and a mother. He had no beginning and no end. So what is his name and what is his son's name? So at the time of Proverbs, this Agur, who's writing this proverb, even he had the understanding at this point that there was a father and a son. There was a creator and there was a creation. So again, who is this talking about? Who could this possibly talking about? Yahweh and King David? Because they love to take King David and make them their idol. The Father and the Son. In the beginning was the Word was Elohim, and the Word was with Elohim. Go ahead.
Verse 5. Every word of Eloi is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add you not unto his words, lest he reprove you, and you be found a liar. 2 things have I required of you. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny you, and say, Who is Yahweh? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my Elohim in vain. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse you, and you be found guilty. There is a generation that curses their father and does not bless their mother.
All right. So this generation that curses their earthly father and does not bless their earthly mother. That's a generation that don't keep commandments because they do what they want to do. It doesn't say that you have to you can curse your father if he's not a good person or he wasn't around, so you can curse your father. It says honor your father and your mother, regardless of what their state is. There's no loophole or fine print that says you as long as you like them or they doing what you ask them to do. And then from a spiritual perspective, cursing your father is cursing Yahweh. Call no man father. There's only one Father above. So this is talking about also Yahweh. In your mother, Jerusalem, the mother of us all. Jerusalem, the city, the church, the assembly. So you are cursing your assembly. You're cursing your assembly when you don't operate according to these commandments. Go ahead.
There's a generation that are pure in their own eyes, yet is not washed from their filthiness.
We're in Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 13.
Proverbs chapter 30, verse 13. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. It's a pride. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. The horselatch has 2 daughters, crying, give, give. There are 3 things that are never satisfied, yea, 4 things say not, it is enough. The grave, the barren womb, and the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that says, it is enough. That says not, it is enough. The eye that mocks at his father and despises to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wickedness. For 3 things the earth is disquieted, and for 4 which it cannot bear. For a servant when he reigns, and a fool when he is filled with meat. For an odious woman when she is married, and a handmaid that is heir to her mistress. There be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. And the conies are but a feeble folk, yet make their houses in the rocks. And the locusts, which have no king, yet go they forth of all of them by bands. The spider takes hold with her hands, and is in kings' palaces. There be 3 things which go well, yea, 4 are comely in going. A lion which is strongest among beasts, and turns not away for any. A greyhound, and an he-goat also, and a king against whom there is no rising up. If you have done foolishly in lifting up yourself, or if you have thought evil, lay your hand upon your mouth. Surely the churning of milk brings forth butter, but the ringing of the nose brings forth blood. So the forcing of wrath brings forth strife.
All right. Let's move on. Let's go to Hosea chapter 3. Hosea or Hosea chapter 3. And one thing that always puts the non-believer in an uncomfortable stance is, okay, if you are not believer of the Mashiach and you're not covered under the blood, then how are you atoning for your sins? The law says that if you transgress, you have to repent, restore, and do your sacrifice. So if you're not doing the sacrifice, then how are you keeping the law? And the first thing they'll do is say, oh, well, Yahweh didn't require a sacrifice from us. He wanted righteousness. He wanted this. Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. But you did. You did sin. So according to this law, it has to be atoned for in a specific way. So what they'll do is they'll go to a prophecy and they'll read a prophecy which will talk about the situation that we're going to be in. They'll say, see, this justifies us transgressing the law. No, it doesn't. The prophecies all through here from all the prophets tell us that we're going to transgress the law. But in the latter days, we're going to come back to the law. That don't mean that while you're in transgression that you're okay, that you're not in danger, and that's fine. There still has to be an atonement. Hosea chapter 3, and we're going to start this at verse 1.
Then said Yahweh unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of Yahweh toward the children of Yasharal, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, for an omer of barley, and an half omer of barley. And I said unto her, You shall abide for me many days. You shall not play the harlot, and you shall not be for another man. So will I also be for you. For the children of Yasharal shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim.
All right, so this is where they like to go. For the children of Yasharal shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, and without a sacrifice. So they say this is why, you see, we don't have to do sacrifices, because there's a prophecy that says there's going to go many days without a sacrifice. This is a prophecy. This does not say, or any prophet does not have the authority to tell you you don't keep the commandments. He's a prophet from Yahweh, and he can say, hey, Yahweh told me y'all ain't going to keep commandments. And he would be right, because we didn't keep it from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. But in no way does this mean that the law of sin and death somehow is just done away with because a prophet said you are going to be in that situation. Verse 5.
Afterward shall the children of Yasharal return and seek Yahweh their Elohim and Dawid their king, and shall fear Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days.
All right. So this is prophecy. But it also says that we shall never cease to have a king. And the king that we have is the king that's on the right hand of the Father. We never were without that king. But there's going to be many days when we won't have that physical king. We won't have that nation. We can't have a king because we don't have a nation to have a king over. We don't have no land. We're out of our land. Our people are scattered according to the commandments, scattered according to the prophecy where we would not keep these commandments and we would be scattered all over the earth. That doesn't mean because the prophecy says that we're going to be scattered from transgression that it's okay for us to transgress. So in order for us to not be in transgression, we have to have a covering. We have to have some kind of atonement for us. We have to be covered under the blood of the Mashiach, which puts us in this grace period that says, okay, you are going to be covered for this short period of time for you to work on repenting from your sins, to work on your transgressions, to build up your treasures in heaven. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 6, or Zechariah chapter 6. And what is the perfect prayer that Yahshua gave us? An example of how we should pray.
Our Father who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth. So we are copying the sample of the example of what's being done in heaven. So a lot of times when these prophecies are given to us and we're given something physical to do, it's just mirroring what we are supposed to be, what's being done in heaven. So we have to understand that there's the carnal aspect of the prophecy, and then there's the spiritual intent of what's going on. And we have to look at both of those, because just the physical aspect of doing something is not enough. Just like just putting some fringes on your clothes and saying, hey, look, I kept the commandment, I have fringes. That's not enough. How is this mirroring what's going on in heaven? Are we keeping these commandments? The angels that are in their proper state are keeping any direction that Yahweh says. We have our directions based upon what we're supposed to do. The angels in heaven have their directions based upon what Yahweh wants them to do. They're keeping the commandments. So it's the same thing with us. So just because we are told put on some fringes, that's not enough. So we have to look at these prophecies and these instructions in the same way that, yeah, while we're here as carnal people, we need to keep the carnal aspect of the law. But then we have to also understand, what is the spiritual intent? What is this for? How does this please a spirit? Zechariah chapter 6. And we're going to start this at verse 1.
And I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzled and bay horses. And I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, What are these, my sovereign? And the angel answered and said unto me, These are the 4 spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the sovereign of all the earth. The black horses which are therein go forth into the north country, and the white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country. And the bay went forth and sought to go, that they might walk to and fro in the earth, and said, Get you here, walk to and fro in the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Then cried he upon me, and spoke unto me, saying, Behold, these that go toward the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Take them of the captivity, even of Heldai, of Tobiah, and of Yediah, which are come from Babylon. And come you the same day, and go into the house of Josiah the son of Zephaniah, and take silver and gold, and make crowns, and set them upon the head of Yeshua the son of Yosedek the high priest.
All right, so it's talking about here physically taking these crowns and setting them on the head of Yeshua. Now, this Yeshua was a high priest, the son of Yosedek, but his name is the same name as the Mashiach. So there's symbolism going on here. And what people would try to say is that once we go on from here, that this is talking about Yeshua, the son of Yosedek, and not referring to Yeshua, the HaMashiach. And this is how we'll know. If we keep reading, we'll see how we'll know that they're talking about a different entity here. Go ahead.
And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaks the word of Yahweh of hosts, saying, Behold, the man whose name is the branch. He shall grow up out of this place, and he shall build the temple of Yahweh. All
right. So it can't be talking about Yeshua, the son of Yosedek, the high priest, because it's telling him, speak unto him, the high priest, and say, Thus says Yahweh of hosts, saying, Behold, the man's name who is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Yahweh. So it's telling him about another entity that's going to build the temple of Yahweh. A different entity here. And this is a different type of temple that they're speaking about. You're not talking about the physical temple, a physical building. This is something different that they're talking about here. Verse 13.
Even he shall build the temple of Yahweh, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. And the crowns shall be to Halem, and to Tobiah, and to Yedidiah, and to him the son of Zephaniah, for a memorial in the temple of Yahweh. And they that are afar off shall come and build the temple of Yahweh, and you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me unto you. And this shall come to pass, if you will diligently obey the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim.
Okay, and they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of Yahweh. And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me unto you. So they that are far off, the scattered, shall come and provide their building block of the temple and help build in the temple, because we are that temple. We are the building blocks. We are the fleshly building blocks, with Yeshua being the cornerstone.
Brother, do you have extra information when you look in the book about the state and branch? And we can verify that, Zechariah 3:8 or Isaiah 4:2.
You What are you talking about? The notes? The notes?
The notes would be about verse 12, the branch that we can bear.
Zechariah chapter 3 and verse 8 and Isaiah chapter 4 and verse 2.
Yeah.
You talking about the study notes?
Yeah, study notes. And if they have any word about the branch in Hebrew, in your book.
What are you reading? Did you read it or?
No, I'm just looking at it.
I didn't see it. It's referring to that.
Isaiah 4:2 says, "In that day shall the branch of Yahweh be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Yasharal." And then there's Isaiah 11:1, where it says, "There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Yesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." But the word branch used here is different from the one that's used in Zechariah. The one that's used in Zechariah and Isaiah 4:2 is 6780, which is semak, which is a sprout growth branch. And the one that's used in Isaiah 11:1 is H5342, which is Netzir,
Right.
which is like the word of Nazareth is actually Natzareth, meaning the branch, which is different from that vowel you take, the Nazarite vowel, because Nazarite and Natsir are two different words.
No, this phone was on mute. No, it was on mute. It was muted from your comment, so I had to unmute his phone. And when you go to Zechariah chapter 3 and verse 8, it's just giving you that reference. "Hear now, O Yahshua, the high priest, you and your fellows that sit before you, for there are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Yahshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave the graving thereof, says Yahweh of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. And that day, says Yahweh of hosts, shall you call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree." So those are the references that it's talking about there, about the branch. And when we get to Isaiah chapter 11, we'll get into that definition of the branch that's used in there.
So you see there's a cleansing quality where the iniquity of the land is removed in one day. So the way Yah has always removed iniquity was through atoning sacrifices.
Bloodshed.
And bloodshed, and it was done by the priests. It was carried out by anointed priests. And it took a lot of bulls were sacrificed. But then you're going to remove the sin of all the people. And this sacrifice was taken over a span of time. Even this Feast of Tabernacles, it's days you're sacrificing. But here it's all done at one day and at one time. So it makes you wonder, Yah, what you got in mind?
Right. And this one day and one time where this iniquity is going to be removed, it's with the passing of one man, giving up his life, removing that iniquity. Here he comes to take away the sins of the world, giving you that opportunity from that point on. This is what you can do. And when you're being immersed, your iniquity removed in one day, in one moment, then you have to start from that point, and now it counts. All these things are counted. So like you said, that atonement had to be made for. Before, the atonement was, the high priest would go in there and he would do the atonement for the people, and your sins would be removed for that year. But his conscience was not removed because he was going to sin again after that. So there had to be an atonement that could be done by somebody who was perfect, who could literally remove all the iniquity. Because he couldn't remove the iniquity of that high priest because he was still had a sinful mind. He was still going to sin.
So it had to be something of greater worth than just a bull or a lamb.
Exactly. Because then you're still sinning by killing that bull and that lamb. But when a man gives up his life,
that set apart spirit, that's from the beginning, before the sun and the moon were created.
Exactly. That's different. He said, you can't take my life. I give up my life. You didn't do it. You just did the physical act. That bull ain't like, yes, kill me. I'm ready, sir. I'm ready to be the perfect side. Man, that bull is trying to kick you and trying to get up out of there. Eyes wide open. He's scared.
Oh, brother. I just wanted to add that also comes when we go into Romans, it makes excellent reference, to Christ, how much he got. In Romans chapter 10, verse 4, they go 1 through 4.
Either blood of bull or goats.
Right.
All right.
So it says, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes. So what it was talking about there in reference to that branch from that verse.
Right. All right. So do we finish reading Zechariah chapter 6?
Zechariah chapter 6. We're still at the branch, and
All right, we're at verse 13.
Even he shall build the temple of Yahweh.
Oh no, we read that. We read the whole thing. They that are far off shall come and build in the temple of Yahweh. So we read that. Let's move on. We're going to go to Revelation chapter 21, and we'll get some more understanding about this temple that's being built. Revelation chapter 21. And if we're having any Facebook issues with the bandwidth, we can always go to the YouTube page for Israelite Gathering, or you can go to IsraeliteGathering.com and you can see the video right live on IsraeliteGathering.com or YouTube, or you can do the call-in number and hear the class. For some reason, Facebook has been giving us some issues streaming.
Revelation chapter 21 and verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, Yohanan, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Elohim out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Yahweh himself shall be with them and be their Elohim. And Elohim shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, neither crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But the fearful and unbelieving, and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death.
All right, jump down to verse 17.
And he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is the angel. Verse 18. And the building of the wall of it was of jasper, and the city was of pure gold, like unto clear glass. And the foundation of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth an emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth sardius, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the tenth chrysoprasus, the 11th a hyacinth, the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gate was of one pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. And I saw no temple therein, for Yahweh El Shaddai and the Lamb are the temple of it.
All right, so in this New Jerusalem, there is no temple therein, for Yahweh Elohim Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. Go ahead.
And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of Elohim did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof.
All right, so this goes back to Zechariah chapter 6, where it talks about building that temple. Yes, because the Lamb and Yahweh are the temple thereof. So it takes them to build that temple. And then you see the 144 cubits according to the measures of a man, that is, of the angel. That lets you know that this 144 is very similar to the 144,000. There's a lot of symbolism going on here, and all of this is being framed after how it's already framed in heaven. And either of this is all pertaining to men, a man, a person. So when we see this big physical temple, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a literal physical temple in Jerusalem makes up the city. It's the people that make up the city. And they were trying to show us that when they were talking about that you are the building blocks of that temple. You are the fleshly building blocks of that temple, this new temple. So in New Jerusalem, why would he turn around and make another huge, giant building for people to idolize? Go ahead.
Verse was it
24.
And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it.
All right. So the nations of them which are saved, so that means other nations are going to be saved that cling on unto Yasharal and to Yah's righteousness, shall walk in the light of it. Didn't say they're going to walk in it. It says they're going to walk in the light of it because there's order. And then it says the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. They have to make their offerings to this king, to the great king. But they got to do it through Yasharal because they not in it. They walking in the light of it. Go ahead.
And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. And there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defiles, neither whatsoever works abomination or makes a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life.
All right. All right, we're going to stop right there. We're going to pick this class up in Bible study. But some of these scriptures, we need to have these scriptures ready because now more than ever we're running up against those spirits that want to reject this word, and they think they're rejecting a white Jesus. They think they're rejecting a Greek mind frame, but what they don't realize is that if you reject any of these scriptures, these are words from the Most High. When you reject any of those things, you're putting yourself in a dangerous state because you're rejecting the word. Now, nowhere does it say in here we're supposed to worship the Mashiach, but we are supposed to use his example. We're supposed to use his word, which is his Father's word, to govern our lives and guide us down that narrow path, because it's those keeping of the commandments which gives us life, which gives us light to shine. And that light is supposed to shine amongst the darkness and light up the narrow path for all those that are in darkness that Yahweh called to come to him through the Son. So that's all we're going to do today. Any last questions or comments before we close? All right, let's go ahead and close in a prayer. All brothers remove the head coverings, and all sisters pray with the heads covered. And we face the east towards Jerusalem. Elder Mikael, can you go ahead and close us out in prayer?
Heavenly Father, Yahweh, we give you thanks for the Yahweh, for allowing us for the Yahweh to witness your word for the Yahweh, to hear your word for the Yahweh, to have your word embedded into our hearts for the Yahweh, so we may change for the Yahweh to do your mighty will. Thank you for the Yahweh. Open our hearts, our minds, and our ears for the Yahweh to your truth. Heavenly Father, we ask in Yeshua's mighty name, Father, to allow us, Father, to really understand your word, Father, be able to be doers of your word, not just hearers of your word, Father Yahweh. Let us walk in your word, Father Yahweh, because we know, Father, we make mistakes every day, Father Yahweh. Allow us to repent, Father Yahweh, to be your mighty will, Father Yahweh, so it be changed, Father Yahweh. Heavenly Father, that your children around the world hears your word, Father Yahweh, feel the same way, Father Yahweh. Let them repent, Father Yahweh, for the things that they've done, Father, to let themselves be clean before you, Father Yahweh, so we may hear your word and do your word, Father Yahweh, and know the truth of your word, Father Yahweh. Thank you for allowing our brothers, Father, to give your word, Father, in this truth, Father, to the best of what you allow us to know, Father Yahweh. Thank you, Yeshua's holy and mighty name.